It was a cold, rainy evening in New York City. Sandra Bullock, known for her kindness and down-to-earth nature, had just finished a long day of filming. She decided to grab a warm cup of coffee at a luxurious 5-star hotel where she was staying. As she walked into the grand lobby, she noticed a young girl, no older than 10, sitting on the steps outside, shivering in her tattered clothes. The girl had a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry, please help." Sandra's heart clenched. Without hesitation, she turned around and walked to the hotel's restaurant. She ordered a steaming bowl of soup, a sandwich, and a cup of hot chocolate. Holding the tray carefully, she made her way back outside. Just as she knelt down to hand the food to the girl, a sharp, condescending voice rang out behind her. "Miss Bullock, you shouldn't encourage these street rats," sneered Mr. Davenport, the hotel's elderly concierge. He was a man who had worked there for decades but had grown bitter with time. His thin lips curled in disgust. "People like her ruin the image of this fine establishment." Sandra's eyes flashed with disbelief. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "If you want to do charity, do it somewhere else. This is a place for VIP guests, not beggars," he added, crossing his arms. Before Sandra could reply, a smooth yet commanding voice interrupted. "That's funny, Davenport. I seem to recall a time when you were the one in need." The lobby fell silent as Keanu Reeves stepped forward. He had just arrived at the hotel and had overheard the entire exchange. Mr. Davenport's face turned pale. "Mr. Reeves," Keanu took a slow step toward him. "You remember me, don't you? 30 years ago, before you had this job, you were homeless. And do you remember who helped you?" Davenport swallowed hard. His eyes darted around as guests and staff started murmuring, all curious to hear the story. Keanu continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I was just starting my career back then. I used to see you sitting outside that little diner downtown, struggling to get by. One day I bought you a meal. You thanked me, told me your story, and I helped you get an interview here. I thought you'd remember what it was like to be in need." The old man's hands trembled. He looked down, ashamed. Keanu turned to Sandra, then to the little girl. He smiled warmly and knelt beside her. "Hey there! You like hot chocolate?" The girl nodded shyly, her eyes wide with awe. Keanu took the cup from Sandra and handed it to the girl. "Then drink up, kiddo. You're our guest today." The hotel lobby burst into quiet applause as people realized what had just happened. Mr. Davenport, still shaken, muttered an apology and hurried away. Sandra looked at Keanu and grinned. "You always know how to make an entrance," he chuckled. "What can I say? I like reminding people that kindness costs nothing." That night, Sandra and Keanu invited the little girl inside, ensuring she had a warm place to stay. And from that day on, Mr. Davenport was never cruel to another soul in need again. The end. What do you think? I can add more drama or details if you'd like. Glad you liked it. Here's the continuation of the story. The next morning, Sandra Bullock sat in the hotel cafe, sipping her coffee and watching the rain trickle down the large windows. Across from her, the little girl, whose name was Lily, was eating pancakes with more enthusiasm than Sandra had seen in a long time. Keanu Reeves walked in, dressed casually in a black jacket and jeans. He gave Sandra a small nod before pulling out a chair. "How's our guest doing?" "Huh," he asked with a smile. Lily looked up with syrup on her chin and giggled. "This is the best food I've ever had." Sandra chuckled and handed Lily a napkin. "You deserve it, sweetheart." But their warm moment was interrupted by a hesitant cough. It was Mr. Davenport. The old concierge stood by the table, looking deeply uncomfortable. His posture wasn't as stiff as before, and his eyes lacked the arrogance they had held the night before. "Miss Bullock, Mr. Reeves, I owe you both an apology," he said, his voice quieter than usual. Sandra and Keanu exchanged glances, but stayed silent, letting him speak. "Last night, after what you said, Mr. Reeves, I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "I thought about the times I was on the streets, how it felt to be ignored, judged, or worse, invisible. And then I realized that's exactly what I did to Lily. I became the same kind of person who once turned their back on me." He turned to the little girl who watched him curiously, her fork paused mid-air. "I'm sorry, young lady. I was cruel when I had no right to be. If you'll allow me, I'd like to make it up to you." Lily looked at Sandra, who gave her a reassuring nod. She turned back to the old man and whispered, "Okay." Davenport exhaled, relieved. "I spoke to the hotel manager this morning. We have a charity program that I've, ignored for years. But I asked him if we could sponsor a place for you in a good shelter nearby. A safe place with warm beds, meals, and even school programs. You'd have people who care for you, instead of struggling outside in the cold." Lily's eyes widened. "Really?" Davenport nodded. "If you want, we can go check it out today." For the first time, Lily's lips trembled, and tears welled in her big brown eyes. "I'd like that." Sandra reached over and squeezed the old man's hand. "That's a good start, Mr. Davenport." Keanu leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. "See, it's never too late to be better." From that day on, Davenport changed. He became one of the kindest staff members in the hotel, ensuring that no one in need was ever turned away or mistreated again. As for Lily, she flourished. Thanks to Sandra and Keanu's kindness, she found a new home, new opportunities, and most importantly, a reminder that good people still existed in the world. And whenever Keanu and Sandra visited the hotel, they would always make sure to have a meal with their favorite little guest. The end. That wraps up the story. Let me know if you'd like more twists, drama, or an extended epilogue. Sure, here's an extended epilogue to the story. Years later. 10 years had passed since that rainy night outside the hotel. Life had moved on, and so had Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Both were busier than ever, but neither had forgotten the little girl they had helped. One evening, Keanu arrived at the same hotel for an event. It had become a special place for him. After all, it was where he had taught an important lesson about kindness. As he walked into the elegant lobby, he was met with a surprise. Standing behind the concierge desk, dressed in a neatly pressed uniform, was a young woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. "Good evening, Mr. Reeves. Welcome back." Keanu blinked. There was something familiar about her, and then it hit him. "Lily?" Her smile widened. "You remember me?" Keanu's face lit up with joy. "Of course I do. Look at you, you've grown up." At that moment, Sandra Bullock walked in, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She had just arrived for the same event and was heading toward the front desk when she saw Keanu grinning like a proud older brother. She followed his gaze and gasped. "Lily?" she echoed. Lily stepped from behind the desk, and before she could say a word, Sandra pulled her into a warm embrace. "Oh my God, look at you. You're all grown up," Sandra said, holding her at arm's length. Lily laughed. "I wouldn't be here without you too." Keanu glanced at her uniform. "You work here now?" she nodded. "I got a scholarship thanks to the shelter program, and I studied hospitality management. Mr. Davenport actually helped me get this job as an intern, and now I'm training to become a hotel manager." Sandra's eyes sparkled with pride. "That's incredible, sweetheart." At that moment, an older but much kinder-looking Mr. Davenport approached, smiling. "Ah, Mr. Reeves, Miss Bullock. I was hoping you'd see our star employee." Keanu chuckled. "You've done well, Davenport." The old concierge chuckled. "Took me long enough, huh?" Lily smiled at him. "You've helped me just as much as they did." Sandra wiped a tear from her eye. "I can't believe it. This is the best surprise ever." Lily looked at them with a soft, heartfelt expression. "You two taught me what kindness really means. I'll never forget it. And now, I try to do the same for others who need help, just like I once did." Keanu put a hand on her shoulder. "That's what it's all about, kid. Passing it forward." As they stood there, the three of them, Keanu, Sandra, and Lily, felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the grand chandeliers or the luxury around them. It was the warmth of knowing that one simple act of kindness could change a life forever. And it had. The end. That's the full circle moment. Hope you liked the extended version. Let me know if you want more. A new beginning. As the evening continued, Keanu, Sandra, and Lily sat in the hotel's lounge, reminiscing about the past. The once shy, hungry little girl was now a confident young woman, speaking with grace and gratitude. "So tell us," Sandra said, sipping her tea. "What's next for you, Lily?" Lily smiled, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Well, I've been thinking about starting a program here at the hotel. A mentorship for underprivileged youth, a way to train them in hospitality, help them get jobs, and give them a fresh start." Keanu's eyebrows lifted in admiration. That's a fantastic idea. Mr. Davenport, who had been listening nearby, chuckled. I told her the hotel board might need some convincing. They don't usually approve new programs easily. Lily nodded. I know it'll take work, but I want to show them that it's possible, just like you showed me that kindness can change everything. Sandra leaned forward, a mischievous glint in her eye. What if we help with that? Lily tilted her head. What do you mean? Keanu smirked. You're sitting with two people who know a thing or two about making an impact. If the hotel board needs convincing, let's give them a reason to say yes. Over the next few days, Keanu and Sandra used their influence to gather support. Sandra reached out to her network, while Keanu made quiet donations to strengthen the cause. Soon, word spread about Lily's idea, and the hotel management had no choice but to listen. The big moment. A week later, Lily stood before the hotel's executive board presenting her vision. She spoke passionately about giving young people a second chance, just as she had once been given. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then the head of the board cleared his throat. This is actually a brilliant idea. We approve. Lily's eyes widened. Wait, really? Yes, another member added. With Mr. Reeves and Miss Bullock backing this, we'd be foolish to turn it down. Lily turned to where Keanu and Sandra sat at the back of the room. They gave her thumbs-ups. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. The legacy lives on. Months later, the hotel launched its Second Chances program, offering training and jobs to homeless youth. Lily led the initiative, ensuring that no child ever had to feel alone and forgotten like she once had. One day as she walked through the lobby, she noticed a young boy no older than 10 standing hesitantly at the entrance. He had the same lost look she once had. Lily knelt down and smiled. Hey there, you hungry? The boy nodded shyly. Lily extended her hand. Come on, let's get you something to eat. From the balcony above, Keanu and Sandra watched with pride. Keanu smiled. Looks like she learned well. Sandra nodded. And now, she's teaching others. As Lily led the boy inside, the cycle of kindness continued, one life at a time. The end, or just the beginning. Hope you enjoyed the final chapter. Let me know if you want even more twists.